Our scripture this morning comes from the book of Hebrews, and from the 13th chapter, the first 6 verses. Keep loving each other like family. Not neglect to open up your homes to guests, because by doing this, some have been posed to angels without knowing it. Remember prisoners as if you were in prison with them, and people who are mistreated as if you were in their place. Marriage must be honored in every respect, with no cheating on the relationship, because God will judge the sexually immoral person and the person who commits adultery. Your way of life should be free from the love of money, and you should be content with what you have. After all, he has said, I will never leave you. I will never abandon you. This is why we can confidently say, the Lord is my helper, and I won't be afraid. What can people do to me? May God add his blessings to the reading of the scriptures this morning. Let me ask you a question. If you could win an Olympic medal, which would you prefer? A silver medal or a bronze medal? The answer seems obvious, doesn't it? The silver, of course, is for the second place. The bronze is for third place. Ken Crockett, in his book, I Once Was Blind, But Now I Squint, tells about a surprising study of Olympic medal winners. Now, you would assume that the silver medal winner would be happier than the bronze medalist since they received a higher honor, but that isn't always the case. The bronze medalists who came in third were actually found to be happier than the second place medalist, the silver medalist. The former Olympians explained why they felt this way. The third place winner was thrilled just to have won a medal. The silver medalist, on the other hand, felt like they were losers because they did not come in first place. That just goes to show us that what happens to you is not nearly as important as what you perceive happens to you. Our lesson this morning from the book of Hebrews gives us a formula for a winning life. Follow it, and not only will you be successful as a follower of Jesus Christ, but you will also be successful as a human being. The first part of the formula, keep on loving. Love people you go to church with. Love people you live with. Love people you work with. Love people you don't even know. And more than that, love people you normally wouldn't associate with. The writer of Hebrews says in this passage, keep on loving each other as brothers. Do not entertain strangers, or do not forget to entertain strangers, for by doing so, some people have entertained angels without knowing it. Remember those in prison as if you were their fellow prisoners, and those who are mistreated as if you yourself were suffering. Now, before you mark this passage off as hopelessly idealistic, I want to describe someone who loved like this. This is a real person. His name is Jack. Jack was an insurance salesman, but he cared about his clients in a real way. He was a leader in his community, a man of integrity, but also a man of humility. He treated everyone the same. The clerk in the convenience store, the CEO in a large corporation, it didn't matter. He treated everyone with respect and dignity. Jack also found time in his busy schedule to be involved in ministries to the homeless. He never judged them, he never looked down on them. He only wanted to help them turn their lives around. Jack also took time to mentor young people, not only in his own industry, but also those who were struggling to get ahead in other areas of life. He was a positive and cheerful man who never said a mean word to any person. He was a leader in a large Episcopal church in his community. And when he died just a few years ago, he was in his late 70s, his funeral attracted one of the largest crowds in the history of that church. He had touched many lives. But Jack was a man who kept on loving, regardless of the circumstances. You know, people like Jack are not fictitious. They're real people. They embody the kind of life that the writer of Hebrews is commending. Keep on loving. Love everybody. Family members, friends, co-workers, everybody. In the best known portion of our lesson this morning, the writer says, "Do not forget to entertain strangers, for by so doing, some people have entertained angels without knowing it." Do you remember the scene in Genesis when Abraham was sitting at the door of his tent? On this particular day, he saw 3 men apparently needing help. This would not have been unusual, for in those days there were no motels, there were no restaurants, no places for weary travelers to turn for hospitality. So people in the Middle East often prided themselves in their hospitality. Abraham did not turn away those in need of help. So at the appearance of these 3 strangers, he sprang to his feet, called to Sarah for help, and the 2 of them quickly ministered to these men. Abraham later discovered that he was host to 3 messengers of God in disguise. Now, while he was a gracious host, God was even more gracious. God blessed Abraham and Sarah with a child late in their years. But the message of Hebrews is clear. Love everybody, those you know, those you don't know. In fact, make a special attempt to be kind to strangers. First Lieutenant Patrick Chaseman tells about the first parachute jump he participated in. It was at Fort Benning, Georgia, home of the Army Paratrooper School. Now, Fort Benning is near Columbus, Georgia, but its primary drop zone is across the Chattahoochee River in neighboring Alabama. Lieutenant Chaseman learned this on his first jump. After his parachute opened safely, he began to look around and he spotted a sign which would only be visible to the paratroopers jumping. The sign said, "Welcome to Alabama. Drop in anytime." Evidently, the residents of that rural Alabama community wanted to make these young paratroopers who were strangers in their community feel at home. But that's the first part of the formula for a successful life. Keep on loving. The second part of the formula, keep on living by God's law. The writer continues, marriage should be honored by all. Many lives have been shattered by failure to follow this one simple rule. Several years ago, a man wrote a newspaper advice columnist, "I am having an affair with 2 women. I can't marry them both. What should I do?" and don't give me any of that morality stuff. The colonists answered, what distinguishes us from animals is morality. Please write a veterinarian for advice. We believe a strong sense of right and wrong is essential to a well-functioning society. Do you remember the song that asked this question? Where did all the good people go? I've been changing channels and I don't see them on the TV show. Where have all the good people go? Well, to be honest, there are a lot of good people in this world. They come of every race, every creed. But as a society, we do seem to be drifting. And I have to admit that I am concerned about the future. You know, there's been many studies of America's young adults. Our young people have many virtues. They are more tolerant towards others, unlike themselves. They generally have a passion for protecting the environment. There's one study that suggests that there may be warning signs there. This one study says young adults are more likely as a group to value happiness above integrity, more committed to live for today rather than prepare for tomorrow, and much more likely to live by the dictum, eat, drink, and be merry. I tried to find out more about this study. You know, who conducted the study, how large was the study group, how large was the study area. I could not find any info on this study, so I personally took it with a grain of salt, because my experience with young people has been different. Now, I do believe that young people have more obstacles to overcome than we did. Drugs, social media, peer pressure is much greater today than it was when I was in my youth. Also, the runaway cost of higher education. These are just a few of the obstacles young people have today that we didn't have. I was a member of Kiwanis for several years, and every year the Kiwanis would host the top 10 seniors from Switzerland County. It was always my job as chaplain to the Kiwanis to interview the students and then give a talk, giving some advice and some encouragement. I was always impressed with their goals in life, because most often their goals involve careers that would better society, careers that would help other people. Always came away from that experience with a renewed confidence in our youth, a renewed confidence in the future. But as I said last week, we adults have a responsibility to make sure our youth have good role models who live by faith, role models who live with integrity. Living with integrity is a big deal. But keep on loving. Keep on living according to God's law. And one more thing. Keep on trusting. Listen as the writer of Hebrews continues. Keep your lives free from the love of money. Be content with what you have, because God has said, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. So we say with confidence, the Lord is my helper. I will not be afraid. Successful living is a package. You cannot pick and choose among these four principles. You cannot live a successful life without these first two principles, loving others and living according to God's law. And the reason we're able to fulfill these two demanding challenges is that we trust God. It's not always easy to love people who don't love us. It's not easy to always try to do the right thing. There are all kinds of influences that will try to take us off course. But as long as we know deep in our hearts that God is with us, we can make it. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the story of Robinson Crusoe. Robinson Crusoe was the chief character in a novel by Daniel Defoe. Crusoe was shipwrecked and stranded on an island for 28 years, where he encountered cannibals and captives and mutineers before being rescued. And some of you may remember Crusoe for his man Friday. Friday, you remember, escaped from the cannibals and was befriended by Crusoe, who named him after the day of the week that he appeared. Crusoe then teaches Friday English and converts him to Christianity. Now, what you may not remember was that Crusoe himself was not particularly religious until being shipwrecked with hardly anything to read except the Bible, which washed up on the shore with him. Here are the words that Daniel Defoe had Crusoe write in his autobiography. One morning, being very sad, I opened the Bible upon these words: I will never, never leave thee, nor forsake thee. Immediately it occurred to me that these words were written to me. Why else should they be directed in such a manner, just at the moment when I was mourning over my condition as one forsaken by God and man? Well then, said I, if God does not forsake me, what matters it, though the world should all forsake me? From this moment I began to conclude in my mind that it was possible for me to be more happy in this forsaken, solitary condition than it was possible I could ever have been in any other state in the world. And with this thought, I was going to give thanks to God for bringing me to this place. This is the kind of peace of mind that the writer of Hebrews was writing about. Keep your lives free from the love of money. Be content with what you have, because God has said, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. With the knowledge that God is with us, we can cope, we can conquer. Nothing else in this world can provide that type of security. In April 1988, a tragic event happened. A photographer who was a skydiver jumped from a plane along with a group of other skydivers in order to film the group as they fell. On the film shown on the evening network news, a few seconds after this skydiving photographer jumped, the picture went berserk. Here's why. The photographer had absent-mindedly jumped out of the airplane without his parachute. It wasn't until he reached for the ripcord that he realized he was free-falling without any means to slow his descent. Faith in Jesus Christ is our parachute. It allows us to live triumphantly in a world that sometimes throws us for a loop. It allows us to love with great passion. It allows us to live according to our best values. It allows us to become our best self. And then we discover this is living at its best. How do we know this is true? Some of us are fortunate enough to see it lived out in those who have been a role model for us. our parents, leaders in the community, Sunday school teachers, our school teachers, or people we know like Jack, whom I mentioned earlier, who live successfully because they follow these principles. The writer closes this passage with these words: Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. That's what we want to know, isn't it? Our parachute is secure. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Keep on loving. Keep on living by God's command. And remember, in every circumstance, God says to you, never will I leave you. Never will I forsake you. Amen.